2010 Camaro. That's what I'm talking about. I'm starting to look kind of good in this thing, I think. Now today's show is all about new technology and old technology. We're gonna explode a carburetor, show you how to rebuild one of those, get inside. We're also gonna look at a modern serpentine belt system versus an old one. A lot of cool stuff. Stay tuned. Welcome to Two Guys Garage. Ah, the smell of a new car. It's like the smell of success, isn't it? Another smell of success is a zip tie belt. Nothing says you're really making it in the world like a zip tie belt. Now, probably until I get that belt thing taken care of, I'm not gonna get myself a new Camaro. The great thing with these, you know, you make the payment, you get your independent rear suspension, you get all the safety, dual airbag, you get features like XM radio, Bluetooth setup built into it, and you don't have to do anything. But you know what? I just have to do stuff. I gotta tear it apart, I gotta put some new things on, I gotta get rid of these big plastic engine covers. You know, I'm just kind of an old car guy. That's how it goes. But speaking of old cars, let's go inside, see what our Byrd man's getting into. What are you doing, Byrd?
What am I doing? Well, I figured it's time we finally got this car to run like it should.
You didn't like the
Well, you know, we've done a lot of work to it. We've got it all cleaned up and polished, but sitting for 20 years, ruined that gas tank, and all that crud, that rust and everything just shoved itself in this carburetor.
I've been driving around a 2010 Camaro. Put the key in, crank it up, you know, I'm done.
2010
You're in here like tearing
Camaro,
carburetors apart.
vintage 60s Camaro.
So you're gonna put a new one on?
Actually, I'm jealous. Well, we could put a new one on, we could put a performance carburetor on it, but actually these old quadra-jets are really good, like mild and pretty heavy-duty performance carburetors. You just gotta know how to set them up, and a lot of people kind of get scared off. I think we need to take this thing apart, walk these guys through some of the little tips and tricks, make them feel pretty good. Maybe they might work on theirs at home.
I think I am kind of scared of that. You go ahead.
All right, well, I'm gonna finish unbolting this thing. Let's get it on the bench, we'll dissect it a little bit, take a couple looks at it, we'll walk through how a carburetor works, get this thing rebuilt and clean, this engine running like new. Now I've got the carburetor on the bench here. Now, cookie sheet works great, but don't let your significant other see what you're doing to it. Now, this is nice because you're gonna have a little, maybe a check ball, a little spring or something that could pop out. So somewhere where you could catch stuff, it doesn't roll off the table. You know, what's nice is get a little working block. You got linkages that hang below the bottom surface here. This is great to give it a nice, flat, sturdy surface. Now, carburetor can be scary. A lot of guys are kind of not familiar with the Rochester carburetor, but the quadra-jet is actually a really good carburetor. Now, you can see on the bottom, it's got a spread bore. So the primaries are smaller. They give you a bigger velocity, bigger signal to feed those main jets. That's what makes them work so good. That's why GM stuck with them for years. They made millions of these carburetors. Now, the rears are huge, and that'll let all the airflow you need in for a good size, say 500 horsepower engine, no problem. These built up to about 800 CFM on some models. Now, if you're a little bit concerned, you're not real familiar with a carburetor, it's the technology age. Get your digital camera out. Get over here and take a couple shots of the linkage, because a lot of this stuff on the outside is pretty simple, but once it's kind of laid out, you'll forget how it goes. So as you're stripping it down, take a couple of photos. As you start pulling the body apart, look at your gasket, get your new gasket out, kind of make sure you got the right one and set it aside. I'm going to go ahead and start stripping this thing down, and we can get it in the cleaning tank, let it sit for an hour or two, hopefully get all the grit and grime out. We'll blow it out, see what we got, we'll start the rebuild. So let me get this thing going and get it in the tank. Now I'm starting to get this thing broken down pretty good. Now one thing I like to do is try to stay a little organized. If you're not real familiar with a particular carburetor, you know, it helps to kind of organize, put your choke mechanism over here. You know, we've got our metering rods, you know, we'll have our jets inside, accelerator pump arm, I'll put my accelerator pump over here, my spring. You know, kind of methodically get yourself nice little areas, stay organized. And you can see right off the bat, some of the junk that we're pulling out of this carburetor already. So all these tiny little holes that control the fuel and the air that comes into the carburetor, gets this junk in there. It's never going to run right. There's very little pressure to drive the fuel that's in this bowl into your engine. So you put a little restriction like that, hoses the whole thing. Now what's nice, we got a kit from Jet Performance. The kit comes with everything. A lot of times you order a rebuild kit for a quadra-jet, just comes with a couple of gaskets, maybe a needle and seat. They have the updated float. They've got new updated needle and seats. They got everything from filters, plungers, you name it. So it's a complete kit. You even have the choke pull off. So it's great. Everything is right here, ready to put back together, make it run again. So I'm going to keep slowly dissecting, and as I do, I'll kind of check, make sure I've got the right gasket, kind of set it aside. A lot of times you get multiples, different carburetors for different years. So methodically, I'll kind of pull through this thing. Once again, we'll get it in that dunk tank, let it soak for a while.
All right, I'm going to pull this hose. That way we can back flush the radiator system and access the belts. Ooh, man. Woohoo! Look inside of there, like a Titanic. That's nasty. Let's go ahead and pull this thing. My money says there probably won't be a thermostat in here. Knowing this guy. Wow, that's a big shocker. You should have a thermostat right here. When it heats up, lets the water come through. But this guy obviously opted to remove it, which is no. So we're gonna go ahead and flush this, get ready to do our belts. We're gonna have a lot of cool belt technology after the break, so stay tuned.
This segment of Two Guys Garage is brought to you by Satisfied Brake Products, North America's leading independent manufacturer of friction technologies. Look to Satisfied for all of your stopping needs.
Hey, welcome back. Now anybody that's worked on an old car has probably changed a few V-belts.
That's what I do with them.
Now, the problem with those things is they get old, they crack, they split, they chunk, and they come apart.
And if you look at this, somewhere around the 70s, they switched from the V-belt to the serpentine. Huge improvement. But they still had their problems. These were made out of neoprene, and this was an old Gates kind of tester that they used to give you, and you put it on to the belt, and if you had more than 3 cracks within this distance, it was time to switch it.
Yeah.
But
now somewhere around early 2000s, OEM started specifically going over to EPDM. Now EPDM and the old neoprene look pretty much the same, and they actually function basically the same, but it's a much better material. It doesn't dry rot and it doesn't crack, so it makes it very difficult to tell when it's time to replace the belt.
these were probably what, 30, 40,000 miles?
Yeah, you might be able to get 50 or 60, but these are creeping on 80 to 100,000.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but a little bit of wear can start making all of your accessory drive start to falter. So maybe you start to slip, you get a little hydroplaning, because instead of each one of those ribs wedging and creating that friction to turn the components, now they're starting to bottom out. So you don't get any sort of clearance for dirt, grime, water.
It's all about the V. And where we pulled this information from Gates' website, you can even look at kind of this little diagram they have. When that V starts to wear out, just like the old one, you're not getting that wedge. And the other problem with the new one is it can really be wearing out and you can't tell because it doesn't crack like the old. So what you have to do, Gates actually came up with this little tool, and what it tells you is how big the grooves are. Now as this thing really starts to dip into the bottom, then you know you've got an issue. And really a lot of times the issue isn't with the belt. Like we said, it lasts for a really long time. You've probably got an issue with a component.
Yeah.
This thing has a misalignment problem more than likely. And you know, if you're a line mechanic, knowing how to read these belts is going to be a really important issue, because all of a sudden you know, slap a new belt on it. I mean, anybody can do that. You send it out and it comes back in a couple of months. Well, guess what? It wasn't the belt problem, honestly.
Yeah, that's never good for business. So you got a couple of tools. One, visual. You can come in here and you can start looking for wear patterns. And you got this physical tool here. You can go and actually measure it. You can show the customer what they've got, because otherwise it looks like a still good belt.
I'm going to try to show you how this, I'm not sure on film if you can see it, but this is sticking way up on a new one.
Yeah, it's very raised and proud.
Now this is the most deep of the old belt. You can really see.
Pretty much sunk right down into the grooves.
Check out our website, TwoGuysGarage.com, and you'll be able to pick up this little tool. Especially if you're a mechanic, you can go and get a lot of tips on how to read. And the more you know about your job, you know, the better you can do it, the better you can give it to the customer.
Yeah.
And he feels comfortable with what's happening. So
Let's see if we can't get the new belts back on this Camaro.
Okay.
I'll get that carburetor rebuilt, and hopefully we'll get this thing running soon.
All right, sounds good. Okay, we got our new gates, belts, and hoses on here. Now this one has 3 belts, so you can imagine it's 3 times the work. Like on a new Camaro, it's got 1 serpentine belt, you adjust the tensioner out, put the new one on, it's like super fast, really clean. But as far as this one goes, we've got our neck that we've kind of faced off on the sander. There used to be a lot of corrosion that happened on here that would cause a leak. This other side had probably a 1/2 inch of muck that was just caked on here from 20 years of sitting. That's going to cut down your flow a lot. Got a new thermostat that goes in, 180 degrees for this application. So we're about ready. I'm gonna go ahead and button this up.
We've got some great questions rolling into our website. Now this week's Ask the Host section, it's from Paul H. Now Paul writes in, I've got a 1998 Chevy Blazer 4-wheel drive. I've got a slight thumping noise coming from my driver's side wheel when I turn left or turn right. Now without hearing it, my first thought might be the CV joints. Those things get tired, they get worn out. First thing you want to do, look for that boot. That boot will dry rot, a lot of times it'll crack or split. All the grease comes out, all the dirt and grit gets in there. It's a downhill slope. So get under there, do a visual inspection. Another thing, accelerate a little bit when you make that turn. See if that thumping or clicking noise gets a little bit faster, you know, RPM of the wheels. Start there, you may want to look at the wheel bearing. Sometimes that bearing will get a little loose and that hub and rotor will start to slap around a little bit. So good luck with that one. Keep writing in and we'll answer your questions every chance we get. Hey, welcome back. We've got just about everything cleaned and prepped on this carburetor. Got a little bit of Carb Restore paint. Looks like the factory coating. Got everything nice, clean, prepped, and organized. There's a couple things on a quadra-jet. The bottom plugs tend to leak. We popped them out. We've got new plugs in there with some epoxy. That'll save you a lot of heartburn. They also tend to leak air through the throttle shaft. So that's the next step. We're going to pull off these throttle blades, pull the shaft out. We've got a great little kit from Jet. We've got a reamer. We're going to ream out the hole. And we're going to pop some new bushings in. It's going to seal up any leakage of air. So that'll be great. A lot easier to get things tuned. Now before we get this all back together, let's stop and look at how a carburetor works. Now you got to get fuel flow into the engine. Well, how do you do that? You need pressure. Well, pressure's not coming from your fuel pump. The fuel pump only puts fuel into a reservoir, kind of like, you know, the back of your toilet. You lift the lid, you'll see what I'm talking about. It's just sitting there waiting to be pulled in. Well, that pressure actually comes from atmosphere. Now, atmosphere obviously is everywhere. There's little vents within the carburetor that let atmosphere push on the top of the fuel, actually lets it leak in, mix with the fuel, get a little frothy before it actually drops in the carburetor. Now, Venturi basically is just a converging nozzle. Gets the air sped up, just kind of like a river. The river gets a little narrow, the flow gets a little faster. When the flow gets faster, right in this region, the pressure drops. So now I got a delta pressure. I can push the fuel and pull it in. Now that's great. At high speeds, I get a lot of vacuum. So that's how the mains work. But at low speeds, like around idle, I don't have enough airflow here to create vacuum. That's where the throttle blade comes in. Now obviously the throttle blade's controlling air. Well, it's also controlling the 2 circuits. So when this is closed and I got very little airflow, I got a lot of vacuum under this blade that I don't have here. So that's where this idle circuit comes in. A little air from outside mixes with the fuel. I've got a strong vacuum, and what I've got is a little pointed screw that closes and opens that hole. So I can set my idle mixture just like this. Well, just above it is a transition slot. So as I start to open the throttle, now I'm building vacuum underneath the blade. I start pulling fuel from this transition slot. These circuits are typically connected. They've got a lot of air mixed, nice, light, frothy, emulsified mixture. And that gets me to where I can start to get more throttle, more air. Now the main system starts to pull fuel in. So that's how those 2 systems work, and you got to treat them differently. Adjust one and adjust the other separately. Now that you know how a lot of that works, I'm going to start putting this back together so the next time you see it, it's just start looking like a carburetor again. So stick around, we'll be right back.
Pretty cool, dude. I like this, your change in pressure actually works the idle circuit down here. I didn't actually realize that's how it worked.
Yeah, a lot of people get confused.
I still say what you do is take your cash, you go down the auto parts and you get yourself a brand new carb.
So I haven't convinced you to pull a carburetor yet?
I'm thinking about it, but not quite yet. Maybe after the break.
All right.
Is there anything I can do to help the turbocharger from coking up with deposits? We'll have the answer after the break. Is there anything I can do to help the turbocharger from coking up with deposits? Turbochargers develop deposits from no oil flow cooling the parts after the engine is turned off. Z-Max's ability to soak into the metal keeps the surfaces lubricated and cooler, which helps to prevent damaging deposits from forming. Using Z-Max in your oil system will keep turbochargers better lubricated and running cooler. This tip is brought to you by Z-Max. Performance you can feel.
All right, welcome to the break room. Now, let's say you bought a boat.
Oh, yeah?
I don't have a boat.
Or maybe even a trailer?
I've got a trailer. And let's say you got, bare aluminum, bare steel, like in a rat rod, any kind of surfaces like that.
Stainless, copper, brass.
And they all oxidize or rust.
Yeah.
So we've got a product here. This is shark hide metal protectant, and it's a very easy application. Let's say like on diamond plate, this has been sitting for a while. You've got that really dull oxidized look. We put it on this side. You can see it stays
Nice and shiny and pretty.
very easy to clean, very easy to reapply. And one of the other really great things about it is that it's such a thin coating that you're not going to get cracking. Like in a urethane coat. Say you try to paint it, it's just not going to fly.
It's easy to put on, a little bit of wet rag, a little bit of shark hide, wipe it on, dries in seconds, recoat every couple of years, and it's going to stay looking nice for a long time.
Good stuff from Shark Hide Metal Protectant. All right, next thing up we've got is the Stage 8 locking header fastener.
Yeah, and if you've ever worked with a set of headers and run them for very long, you'll know that the gaskets typically leak because the fasteners start to work their way out.
Yeah, you've got to have a mechanical locking fastener.
Yeah, the combination of thermal expansion and compression squeezes that gasket thinner, and then you got the vibration of the engine starts to work the bolts loose. So you got a mechanical link right here, basically butts up against a header tube, little clip here. This guy can't go anywhere. This is a grade 8 aircraft quality rolled threads, not cut. Very nice piece.
Now these are application specific, so depending on, like this tab is that shape, this one is another shape, depending on what you have. And they also can make specials if you need something special.
Yeah, if you need a special one done, sure.
Made in USA, and these are super high grade. Check out their website for more products, Stage 8 locking header fasteners. All right, next up, let's say you get a head leak. Got a head gasket leak.
Ooh, you can start seeing the dollar signs flashing right now.
Cha-ching! Now, what this is going to go in. You pour it into your radiator.
Yep. You can use any type of coolant system or any type of coolant that's in your system.
And this is something that can really help you get to that expensive repair. Let's say you don't have the money right now. Maybe you've got it a few months down the road. Pour this in. It'll help cure those leaks and kind of get you through to that expensive repair.
Yeah, sometimes the repair cost is more than the vehicle's worth. So, seriously, you give this a try. This thing could keep you going for quite a while.
Sure, inexpensive. That's the head gasket fix and block seal from Bars Leaks. All right, next up, we got the Bosco Lumalight.
This is the all-in-one light.
This is just a fun toy. You gotta have it. It comes with Velcro. They're all magnetic, so you can stick it on a firewall.
Yeah, they stick everywhere.
Put it on your wall, whatever you like to do. And they've got a lot of hours. They got 100 hours of illumination, so they're going to last a long time. Comes with the batteries. Comes with a clip.
What's cool is you put one somewhere. You got swivel adjustment after it's mounted. Even you got up and down, so you can get it to aim anywhere you need it to. Put it on your hat, hard hat. Go down in the cave.
Put it in your friend's eye. That's the Bosco Lumalight. All right, we're out of time. Got to go. Thanks for joining us in the break room. Back to work.
All right, work it is.
For more information about anything you've seen on today's show, check out speedtv.com or visit TwoGuysGarage.com. This tip is brought to you by LMC Truck. One way to put the end to those rattling windows in your truck is by installing a window channel kit. Over time, the rubber on the window channel will wear out, causing weather elements to get inside. The anti-rattle kit seals to the door glass as the window slides up and down, and is very easy to replace. Simply align the clips and press it into the door. The new kit will tighten up your window track and reduce road noise, vibration, and keep the elements out. The kit is available for most domestic trucks, and while you have the door panel off, it's a good time to replace that window regulator too. This tip is brought to you by LMC Truck. With over 30,000 truck parts in stock, you can get the right part at the right price right now.
How do you know how tall to get it?
Well, each one of these will have its own height of that float, and that float height controls when the fuel gets shut off from that fuel pump, gives you the right level, so now you got the right head pressure of fuel sitting there for everything to feed off of.
Cool. Welcome back. All right, we've got our carb. He's pretty much got it together. I don't get inside there normally. But actually, you know, it's pretty simple if you just take your time.
Yeah, there's just a few basics, and you start feeling more and more comfortable, you explore a little bit, you learn a little bit more. So while we're here, I'll show you a few more things before we put the top hat on it. So there's that fuel reservoir. That's this cavity right in here. All the fuel is going to be sitting in there, controlled by this inlet, little needle and seat. So once the fuel's in there, now all the circuits can start pulling from it. Now, we talked about the idle circuit and the main circuit. You know, in addition, you've got an accelerator pump. Now, accelerator pump will sit right in here. It's a little plunger. And when you accelerate and you move the throttle quickly, the fuel's heavier than the air. It can't react as quickly. So this little guy plunges, gives it a little bit of shot. Make sure your air fuel stays the way it is. So if you've got a heavy car versus a light car,
Or a heavy foot.
or a heavy foot, you might need a bigger shot of fuel or smaller shot when you get on the accelerator quick.
They make manuals for all these things, so they'll kind of give you settings. You'll know where to start, and you know, it's just like building an engine. Break it down, you know, and each piece becomes simple.
Like I said, if you take your time, there's some diagrams that you can get with a kit, you know, help you kind of slowly put it back together. And you can't really screw one up. It may not run right when you take it back apart. Try it again.
That's what you say. All right, we got to go. That's it for today on Two Guys Garage.
We'll see you guys.